welcome to the Red Chair. Today we have Barbara Lancastre. Barbara, good to see you. Welcome to Indico. She's the CEO of Europe and Brazil for Affinitas Education. But you are essentially an entrepreneur and you have a great story that we want to hear everything about it. But tell us from the get-go, where were you born? Who are you? How did everything start?
Okay, so from the very beginning, I was born and raised in Lisbon, Portugal. Although I come from an international family, because my mother was Portuguese, but my father was Austrian. Actually, his family, my grandfather came to Portugal by accident during Second World War. He was meant to go to South Africa, but then he was in a camp in Caldas da Rainha, but he had to go out to renew the passport or something like that, and he fell in love like Cascais.
Wonderful.
And,
what a great choice.
Exactly. And here I am after. So yeah, I lived almost all my life in Portugal. I went to French school, and then did my MBA in the US at Darden, University of Virginia. And that's where my journey in education started.
That's where your passion for education started?
So I knew I had a passion not for education. I didn't know that I had this passion for education. I had a passion for anything that was related to children. Okay. So I worked for Disney publications at Abril Control Journal at the time.
After you came back from Darden?
No, so before Darden, just before Darden. So before Darden, I briefly worked at McKinsey as a consultant. I worked with luxury cosmetic brands for the Arié family. And then I worked for the Control Journal at the time for all the junior publication, mostly Disney. And my dream when I went to the MBA was to come back and work for Disney or Mattel. I wanted to do something related to children. But while I was doing the MBA, I did my summer internship at Espírito Santo Saúde. They were starting up Hospital de Luz with someone that I work, Isabel Vaz, that I worked at McKinsey before. And during my summer, there was someone in the office that was speaking with his wife about enrolling their kids in a school in Portugal. And they were saying, and there was this big discussion, and said, what's the issue? And he said, all the schools are full. The good schools are full.
What year was this? More or less.
This was 2001.
2001, yes.
Yeah.
There were only very few
schools and international schools in Chile and some in Exxon.
But there were also very few internationals.
Exactly.
Compared to today, of course.
Exactly. So I said, maybe working for a children's brand, why don't I think about starting a school? And so...
And how old were you when you thought about that?
26 at the time. And so I went back and spoke with my husband, my father. My father had his entrepreneurial spirit, and he said, go for it, try it. So back to the US, I did the business plan. There was one of the electives was a business plan. So I did a business plan. I wanted to do a business plan of a school. Then I started researching and I found Bright Horizons. I don't know if you're familiar with. So then I found an alumni that was working for Bright Horizons.
Explain what is Bright Horizons?
Exactly. So in Bright Horizons, it's a big network of daycares in the US for companies. So they build this daycare inside big companies so that the employees can go and have their children there. So I decided to do a business plan similar to Bright Horizons to do in Portugal. And so I started. And there was this business plan competition that at that time was all about tech. Napster was the big thing at the time. And
I think we did the MBA more or less at the same time then, because I finished 2002.
Exactly the same.
All right.
So where did you go?
Harvard.
Yeah. Different.
Napster. We use Napster every day.
Exactly. So I decided, okay, I'm going to submit it anyway. And there was this day that I was going to the gym and someone told me, Barbara, you're on the last phase of the business plan competition. I was like, okay. I thought it was daycare business. But yes, that was true. So I ended up being invited to join the Darden incubator. So I was third in the business plan competition. So I had the prize money and I had my salary paid by the incubator, some expenses, and I had a teacher to support me on the development of the business. So at that time, there was, everybody was looking for a job, and I was in this comfortable situation.
Right. And there were no jobs.
I was doing skiing in the weekends because
typical entrepreneur.
And so I came back to Portugal. And I started the first year was I hired someone from education because I knew nothing about education. So I built everything that was finance, operations. We built like the foundations, and that for me was a key. I built the foundation like I was going to have a big company. I had everything fresh from the MBA. I wanted to implement everything that I've learned. And so I hired someone that is now one of my best friends, and she became my partner, Marta Vilarinho, and she developed the education part. If we're opening a daycare is this 3 years of life. They're very important. There's a lot of things in the brain that can only be developed by that time. So she developed what would be the pedagogical module for daycares. And so after a year, we opened the first daycare in Millennium BCP. It went really wrong in the beginning.
Why did it go wrong?
So it did go wrong because Millennium announced that there was going to be a daycare. The facilities were amazing. I was involved in everything in developing the facilities. So I learned a lot. It was very good. But there was never announced that the employees would have to pay. So there was kind of a rebellion from the employees. No, so we don't want to go there. So we had 4 students. Can you imagine? It was like, oh my gosh, maybe I should just go back and to my MBA's offers that we had at the time. And at that time, I spoke with the managing partner of McKinsey at that time. And I said, I think I'm going to go back to find a job. This is not what I invested to do. And he said something that was very wise for me. He said, "But if you don't believe in yourself now, you're going to fail in your first venture. You're not going to believe in yourself. You're not going to believe in yourself. So give it a try."
Right. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Yeah, so that was the first try. It didn't work. But was there something that you did wrong? Do you think that you could have done something different, or was it a problem with the client that didn't inform?
No, I think I should have anticipated how we communicated. I took it for granted that I would have enrollments because it was inside the company.
There was a need. There was a need.
Exactly.
Supposedly.
And I didn't. I think I should have advised the bank in a better way how we would communicate from the
You should probably talk to the employees themselves, right? Talk to the customer, basically.
Talk to the customer.
Don't stay inside the basement.
Exactly.
So
I created something that looks really nice. Perfect. So I took it for granted.
But you didn't talk to the customer.
Exactly.
Yes.
So then,
classic mistake.
Exactly.
Classic.
So then I went to that phase. I asked I could do a presentation to the employees. And so by Christmas we had 10, and then it started growing. So it was the right thing to do. Then after a year or so, I realized that daycare, it's not super profitable because the ratios that you need, not only the ratios that are legally accepted, but also for safeguarding issues, what you should have.
Like number of educators per kid or something.
Exactly. Like in babies, it's 1 for every 4 kids. And so it's not super profitable.
Yeah.
So we then, with Millennium, we agreed to grow to kindergarten, so from 3 to 5 years old. So you can have more students in a class, and you can develop educational wise. It was more interesting. Then at the same time, we opened one in Assembleia da República for the deputados, children and the staff as well. And it was going very well. I think what Marta created was good. It was meaningful, was different. And so I said, maybe we should open our first school with our own capital. So that's when we opened the first daycare and kindergarten in Belém. I think you're familiar with.
Yes, my kids went there.
The kids went there. So, and yes, you were like, every one of you were a believer in ourselves. So thank you for that.
But it was wonderful. It went really well.
And it was, it was very successful from the beginning. My business plan was that I would be full in 3 year time. In the first year, by the end of the first year, the school was full.
But it was already a different concept in the sense that it was already an international sort of bilingual thing, right? From the get-go, from what I remember, right?
Yes, from the very beginning.
So you changed the concept from being inside companies to doing something outside and for a different public.
For different publics. Why
did you think this was a good idea?
The thing is that there was St. Julian's, we had St. Julian's, St. Dominic's, IPS. Carlucci, exactly. And they were truly international schools. But I thought, and Martha was a big believer on the bilingual. Yeah. How you develop the brain and the things that you can gain for being a bilingual for early ages. So we thought, let's do something with a global mind for local families, where you teach them a second language and you open their minds with global concepts, with global history, with a very different methodology, more project-based learning, inquiry-based. So what we created was something that not only would train the brain to have more languages, but also to train the brain for something that it's now very actual, that it's to learn by yourself, to think by yourself, problem solving, that now it's not only problem solving, we should create the problems that today it's more relevant, but at that time was all these things that were important. So we developed something that was very different. And I think I like to, and you can tell me if you agree, I like to think that we created something that was very forward thinking, with a commitment to excellence, but but also relaxed and cool. So
very different. But at the time, you were kind of didn't anticipate the number of foreigners that would come in, right? This was mainly for the Portuguese and some foreigners, maybe in bilingual. And then what happened? Then you went from that little house, which was a big house, and kindergarten. And how did you move on to opening up the first big school in Belém?
So
in Restelo, actually.
Then it was in Restelo. So the thing was, we found that the families were very happy, and what we were creating was very difficult then for the children to go to any other schools. The pathway would go to go to international schools that would be, for some families, not affordable, or to go to Portuguese schools, that everything that we were doing, of course, all the things on the brain that stays, but the language, the fluency of the language, it will be lost. This inquiry, curiosity will be, it was there, but after the age of 5, it would be a shame. So we decided, no, we need to continue to go to primary. So that's when we opened the first building in Restelo with primary. Again, inquiry-based. We created what's I don't know if you remember the Tempo de Estudo autonomous-based learning, where we had 1 hour per day that the students, the children should work autonomously. So by the beginning of the week, they would plan ahead what they would like to develop by themselves with a peer, or to have the support of the teacher or the teaching assistants, which was very good for the
thinking. And did you do this with outside capital, or you managed to?
I managed to do it by myself. So the Belém building, it was my father that bought it, but it was hard, very hard on me. I was paying 7% yield,
right?
and I think that was a big lesson for me, that I was very lucky to grow up in a nice family where
you had support.
I had support, but nothing was for granted.
Right.
And there were some difficulties there ago when we opened Cascais, and I went to my father and said, "Now I need your support." Okay, I will capitalize another 5% on top of what you don't pay. And that for me was very important for how successful I was in the end. So, but going back,
discipline.
the discipline, the cost control, the budgeting, the accountability for everybody, not for me, and what I created for the team. That's so that was a very important lesson that I actually thank my father for that. And so I opened Gestel, and then we kept growing. So Gestel went very well again. Families were happy. Kids were becoming more bilingual. We visit so many schools mostly in Europe and the US and New York. How we can, because develop bilingualism in a child and in a teenager, it's very difficult. So we did a lot of research. We visited. We tried. We changed to the model that Park has today. So it was going successful. So again, and we cannot let the kids go now. So we bought the second house, and that was those two were financed by real estate funds.
Right.
So at the time, they were owned by a real estate fund. And so we opened Gestel 2 for the 5th and 6th. Then after that, we opened Cascais. There was a big step back financial-wise. So again, I did a market research, and I truly believed on the market research, but I shouldn't have. Cascais is a very different market, although it's very close. Families...
You had more competition also in Cascais.
You have more competition, and the families that can and would like to have international education would go to the international schools.
That were more well-known already.
More well-known, established, good results.
While in Lisbon, there were no international schools, really. So.
And also you have the more traditional families that like the traditional schools, Amordeus, Salesianos. So the market was not receptive for that niche that we have. There was a fee point below international schools, but way above. It was about 30% international, below international, 30% above.
Yes, kind of in the middle of both. Yes.
Exactly. And Lisbon was very prepared and was very successful niche.
There was demand.
There was demand
from the Portuguese.
They did not. So what?
Not at the time.
Not at the time.
And then with all the influx of foreigners, suddenly there was.
There was. But so what we've done is that I moved the office, because we never had all the functions like finance, HR, marketing was centralized. So I never had any admin at the school. So we had a small office. So I moved all the office to Cascais. I needed to be there. I was there in the beginning of the day. I was there at 4 p.m. understanding what families wanted. For example, one thing that it was very a thing that was at Park, that everything would go on the walls. It didn't matter if it was beautiful or not. It was just to show off the work of the kids. No filter. In Cascais, that doesn't work. They like beautiful walls. Another thing was, you remember that by the end of each term, you would go to the school as a parent, and the students would show what they have learned with presentations. It was a big thing for Park. It developed their public speaking, presentation skills, but there was not these big productions of schools that were very traditional in schools. In Cascais, they liked it. They liked that all the family went to the school. So these small things that we had to change the fees to make it lower. So we had to make a lot of changes to be successful in Cascais.
Right. But then you actually opened up also here in Lisbon
the big campus.
The big campus. So why did you decide to do that? How did that happen? And did you need external capital to do that?
So I was in a moment where either I would continue open small schools up to grade 6.
Because you also opened Praça de Espanha, right?
And then I opened Praça de Espanha. There was up until primary after Cascais. I would continue to do that module, or I would build a K-12 school, which was my big dream. And I wanted to get the schools into university, and personally, it would be a big difference.
So that was a big project, right?
That was a big project, and for that I could not do on my own anymore.
The limit.
I reached
so
the
at some
limit
stage you had to find investors.
With funds, with real estate funds.
Yes,
it was a limit, and so I went. I hired UI to support me on that, to do the info memo, to do it properly.
Right. A fundraising process supported by Ernst & Young.
Exactly. And so I ended up selling a third of the company to Menlo Capital. At that time, I was very scared. I almost didn't go to the closing. I went to my husband at like 1 a.m. the day before. I said, I don't think I should sell. I look at all the numbers. I roll the numbers again. It doesn't make sense. And then
what were you afraid of?
I was afraid, to be super honest, of losing control.
Losing control, right? Getting people interfering in your day to day and telling you to do this or that.
Exactly. I thought by that time I was involved. I found my passion for education. So I was involved in anything from finance to education to cleaning. And I liked it. I really liked it. And I didn't want anyone to interfere with that. It was very wrong, that idea. Now I think it was very wrong.
But you could have been right. It depends on the fund.
I could have been wrong.
but gladly things went well with Menlo.
Things were very well. Gonçalo Melo was an amazing partner. He supported me. He heard me. It was much better than being alone, because I had someone to. I always had my husband and my father, and my husband, my father, and my brother,
and Marta,
and Marta, of course. But it was very good, right? And I didn't have everything on my shoulders. So it was an amazing journey.
Because effectively you were a solo founder, right? You were the only founder, and it's always difficult to sort of do everything by yourself.
Exactly.
Particularly when you had already grown
with
so much.
Marta always, as you know, but yes. So it was a journey. It was a very happy journey with
So
Menlo.
eventually you created the big campus, which was very successful. And then what happened?
So what happened is, before we were under construction. So before the big campus, we said, okay, let's not lose two more cohorts. So we had 2 cohorts that we had to let go because we didn't have the senior school.
Of course.
One of them was my oldest son that went to St. Julian's. And let's find a solution until the new campus is open, and so we don't lose any more cohorts, and we keep these students. So we have, there was, next to the Alfred campus, there was a big building, offices, that we started the school there with grade 7. So we moved grade 5, 6, and 7 to the temporary facilities. And that's when the big groups came. And they wanted to enter the Portuguese market, and what they saw, instead of doing a greenfield, there's this school that it's owned by a private equity. Yep. I'm sure they will do an exit. So they knocked on Gonçalo's door, and I said, I'm not going to sell. I don't want to sell. We had this agreement that I need to focus to make sure that I do the best journey I can for the parents like yourself believed in me years ago. So this is a big responsibility.
How many years since you founded the company until you reached the point where the international group started knocking on the door?
14 years.
It's a long
time.
Right. But only 3 years after, I think, Menlo invested or something.
2 years after Menlo invested.
So very quickly for the fund.
But I have it, and I still have a big respect to Gonçalo. So I said, Gonçalo, I'm going to the meetings just because I respect you.
Right.
But I'm not going to sell.
Right. It's too early.
To others. We're doing brilliant together. Let's focus on what we have to do. But then in one meeting with Inspire, there was something that I said, no, maybe this is my solution for the stress and the pressure that I have, that I need to deliver to the families that believe in me back in Belém. It's a big responsibility to do senior school, mostly grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, because it's the journey to follow their dreams, to get into university or to do whatever they want. So I texted Marta in the middle of the meeting and said, Marta, maybe you should come, because maybe this makes sense. So she joined the meeting, and then after the meeting, I said, Gonzalo, let's go back to all the others, and I'm going to visit their schools, and let's do it together. It makes sense
to consider this.
Yeah, and then we ended up choosing Inspire together, and we sold to Inspire in 2018.
The whole company.
Not the whole company. I kept a percentage. The percentage.
And
again, I didn't want to lose control. Right. Although my husband gave me the wisest, another wise advice. He said, if you think you're going to stay in control, don't sell it, because you're going to lose control. Right. And if you live with it, and if you think it's the best for the school, the best for your students, do it. If you don't believe on it, don't.
Right.
So I went to this journey with Inspire with that in mind. I lost control.
Right.
But I'm going to learn a lot. It's going to be very good for the school community. It's going to be good for the students. And it's going to be good for me, because Marta, because we're going to learn a lot. And that's how it went. Again, we had another hiccup with the construction that you are very well aware of. So
as expected.
My gosh, as expected. And I think that was the worst time of
the most difficult,
career.
Right?
The most difficult.
The pressure to open up the school, and you couldn't open it.
And when Inspire joined, they had this person that was a visionary on the facilities, and he went there and said, I need to change it. You need to, the building has to be wider. So, because the corridors are too small.
He wanted to change everything, basically.
And I was like,
oh my gosh,
the foundations were already there.
Right.
And I said,
and the project was approved, right?
And I said, we're going to do it, and it's going to delay. Construction was booming.
Right.
We're going to, they're going to stop the construction, because that's when they go there and see that it's not where we're building. The contractor will stop, will go to another constructor. You know,
be a disaster.
And everything that I anticipated at that time happened. So it was awful. We had to run a school for the following year with containers. My kids says they use the most fun times of their lives in the schools. Now that they tell me everything that they've done, I was like, oh my God, those teachers were so nice.
Right.
They didn't come to me with that. It was awful. I had to hire a communications company, Crisis.
Right.
So I don't know if you went to that meeting. There was this meeting with like 200 parents complaining. It was so hard. So I went in with the crisis management team with the questions from the parents. So I went in, started, answered the questions, and then I said, and now I'm going.
Right.
And it was so hard, because I had to pass through all the people, everybody complaining, I want to ask more questions, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to sleep at night. And I was like, oh my gosh.
But you were not prepared for that, right? That was a different situation for an entrepreneur that suddenly finds herself in a crisis. But so for how many years did you stay until?
So I stayed 4 years for Inspire.
4 years.
Working for Inspire. So in the first 6 months, just with my school. Then I was appointed the MD for Portugal and Spain. There was another 5 schools in Spain. Then St. Peter's was acquired. So I also integrated St. Peter's. Then they bought a big group in Spain. So I came back to Portugal. And then we started King's Cascais.
Yes.
So I was involved in all the developments of King's. Then we opened King's, and then that's when I left.
Right. And so the transition from being an employee to an entrepreneur and back to becoming an employee in a way. How did that feel?
I think while I was working with Park, I always felt an entrepreneur. Inspire trusted me for Park. So I learned so much with Inspire, mostly with how to manage a group of schools. And the people in London had very quality on the different functions. So I learned a lot from them. It was very good for me. But what I was doing at Park schools, I always felt
it was yours.
It was mine.
Yours.
And they really trusted me. So there was some metrics, some things that came from Inspire that at Park we would not do as such. But Park was in terms of margin, was the second biggest margin in Europe. Of Inspire schools. So it was very successful for Inspire as well. So it was not very rewarding for me because I was doing something that even today, I think it's the best school I connect with. I think what was done there was with heart and soul, with the students at the center. So but delivering very high financial performance. So it was a very successful venture. So I always felt as an entrepreneur because we kept growing and growing. I left when the first cohort graduated. So it was wonderful. An entrepreneur.
And then did you take some time off? What happened after that?
So Inspire, I learned a lot, but it's a demanding company to work. It has a CEO that has a character that it's very tiring to work with. He respected me, I respected him, but there was a moment that I said, no, enough is enough. I don't have the age to continue doing this. So I was in a week, I was skiing in Canada, a week without speaking to the guy. And when I came back, I called him and said, I'm done.
I gotta go.
I don't want this to my life, so I'm gonna step back. And he asked me to stay another year. I said, a year, it's too much for you and for me. So this is January. I stayed until the end of June.
Right.
And then the new CEO came and I handed over for another six months. My idea at the time was doing nonprofit in education, to give back everything that I've learned to the nonprofit and to do some boards. So because I needed to do something as well, financially wise. So I started. I'm in the board of Teach for Portugal. I'm in the board of Nova SB, Inclusive Community Forum. And then at the time I became board of Salta Group in Brazil, that it's the biggest K-12 group in Brazil. But, I woke up in the morning, I was like, okay, what I'm going to do? I did a course in Inserat on AI, but I was very, very bored and I really missed the schools.
Right. So
I entered in a process for another big group and I was offered the role of MD for Europe. I was very excited, but I knew that someone from Inspire was starting a new group with Oakley Capital as the only investor. So this was the weekend I had to give my answer to that big group in the following week, and I decided to call the guy and say, I know you're doing this. I want to go back. I have an offer, but building something from scratch, it's what I like. So do you have a job for me? And he said, okay, give me a couple of days. He came back to me and said, I don't have a job for you as of today, but I can give you a part-time job. We only have 2 schools in Europe. But we're buying more in September. This was March 23. And I said, okay, I have a non-compete in Portugal, so I cannot work in Portugal. So that's fine. If you're fine with that, he said, yes, we're fine. We're starting with Spain. So that's how I started with Affinitas. And here I am. Now I have 7 schools in Spain, 2 schools in Italy. I will start having schools in Portugal, hopefully, that my non-compete already ended. And I'm also in Brazil. So we're exploring, we're closing 2 schools in Brazil, in São Paulo. And I know pretty much the Brazilian market and everyone in education, although doing business in Brazil, it's very different. Very, very different. So I have my local team, local partners there because, a lot of,
lost.
I think we Portuguese sometimes think getting in love with Brazil, the huge market, we speak the language, but it's so different.
Yes, it's like a totally different culture. And so looking back, what were the main sort of lessons that you'd like to share with other aspiring entrepreneurs?
I think one big lesson for me, it's always be humble. Confident, but humble.
That's a very rare trait, unfortunately.
Yes, but if you're not humble,
you don't listen, you don't learn.
You don't learn. You don't accept your mistakes and learn from your mistakes and reflect on your mistakes. I always listen to the people around me. I always ask a lot of questions to everyone. Like even when I visit the schools, and I don't know how many schools I've visited around the world for today, and I'm involved in the M&A now, so I visit a lot of schools. And every time I go to a school, I always think I ask questions, and at the end, I think, what have I learned from these schools? And I always learn something. And you need to be humble to understand you always learn. And I think for an entrepreneur, and sometimes I think the millennials now, and even the younger ones, they want a different kind of life. They want to work less. They want to have quality of life, which I think I understand. But they want to do it fast.
Maybe a little bit too fast sometimes.
And if you do it fast, you don't listen, you don't stop to reflect what you're doing. So being humble, I think and I have, my kids are at the age of going to work now, a couple of them. And I always say, okay, take your time and be humble, ask questions, use the network that you have. And every time you speak with someone, ask this person for another 2 people to speak with. And I think so being humble, I think it's an important thing. Resilient.
Because things will go wrong at some stage. So you need to wait and see and change if needed, but you need to be resilient.
And everything, what you have in your business plan, Excel can do everything.
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
No, it's going to be different for sure.
It's going to be different. There's going to be a lot of hiccups. And I always say there's no such thing as luck, right?
You need to prepare.
And luck, I learned this in my MBA, this luck, it's when opportunity meets hard working.
Exactly.
So you need to be prepared
when the opportunity comes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And work hard.
Yeah. There's no go.
Play hard, but work hard. There's no other way
of avoiding that. Yes. Working very hard is fundamental.
Exactly. And you cannot take things for granted. Like I was going like this and then come Qashqai's and we had to kind of swim to the surface again and working really hard. And one thing that I think now, especially now in the age that AI, it's the big thing, empathy, it's very important because that's AI modules
cannot replicate that. So having that personal connection.
The personal connections with your team, how you deal with your team. Because one thing that I learned is that I haven't done this on my own. Like Marta was the most important person for me. And all the team that we had to make to, when we went through hard times, I had to ask them to work twice of the time without a pay rise, So And that comes from your respect, your empathy towards the people you work with. And now I feel that the schools that I'm a small group now. We're a group of 28 schools, comparing to Inspire and stuff like that. And the M&A landscape on schools, it's super competitive. And we're getting schools that are choosing us other than North and Inspire, which is amazing. And why is that? Because of empathy, because of the transparency.
Rapport.
Exactly. And not only for the schools that we visit and that we sell ourselves to, but when we say, okay, here's the 28 schools, choose which ones you want to visit and speak with them. So when they go and speak with them, what they say is that the team is respectful. I have one head that the other day said, I never had as much autonomy as I have right now, because the school was owned by an owner. And she said, now I have so much autonomy, and the resources that I have from the group, it's amazing. So this empathy that we create with the schools,
that's what will make the
making us
difference in the future. Well, thank you for sharing. That was wonderful. I'm glad that you came to Indico finally.
Thank you.
Congratulations on everything you've done. And good to see you.
Thank you.
Hope you had a good time and enjoyed this episode of The Red Chair.